sponsorship.
Okay, call to order the meeting of Mayor and Council. Thank you all for being here tonight. If you'll rise for the invocation by Councilman Bradley.
Dear Heavenly Father, Lord and our Master, thank you for this beautiful day and the assembly of this group of people for a common goal to help enhance our city for future generations. Please keep our faith strong, combined with wisdom and strength to accomplish this goal. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Please remain standing for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
May be seated. Okay, as a reminder, we do have an executive session tonight following our regular meeting. Are there any changes? I can almost bet if we don't record it,
You have to hear it.
one person would find fault. So let's pause. I'm going to ask Councilman Holland to come up and sing and dance for a moment.
Then you all will leave.
Was that recorded?
That should be recorded.
Recording is up now. I have to pull it live. The streaming to YouTube and everything, and the audio recorders going. So you can start and I'll pull up the presentation.
Okay, all right, sounds great.
Thank
Okay,
you, Gary.
you've all
Thanks, Gary.
received the minutes from our December 12th meeting. If there are no questions or comments, I'll accept the motion to receive the minutes.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion from Councilman McCoy. Is there a second?
I second.
Councilman Bradley seconds. Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, it's unanimous. All right. Public comment. Do we have anybody here for public comment tonight?
We do. Mr. Dane Cannon.
Mr. Cannon, would you come up, please?
As you know, in Seaford, by far the most significant municipal election problem is woeful voter turnout. An almost unbelievable 93.2% of those eligible, or 4,680 voters, did not vote in the 4/15/23 Seaford elections. Almost a year ago, Elections Commissioner Anthony Albence thrashed my suggestion of state-run municipal elections to enhance voter turnout. In the intervening 9 months, Seaford's Mayor and City Council have not responded to my request for their solutions. Representative Danny Short has made excuses supporting the status quo. Senator Bryant Richardson has remained silent. Commissioner Albence has ducked the issue. No one has suggested any alternative solutions. Instead, Seaford's Mayor and City Council are now attempting to allow 250 plus new non-persons to vote in municipal elections. This is a red herring distraction from the big problem: massive lack of human voter turnout. Both Representative Short and Senator Richardson are all in on the proposed non-person voting by sponsoring and supporting this proposed charter change in the General Assembly. I'm highly dissatisfied with Mayor and City Council's lack of response, categorically oppose Representative Short's apparent acquiescence to the status quo, strenuously object to Short's and Richardson's support of non-person voting legislation, and I'm very disappointed with Commissioner Albence's hands-off attitude toward the problem. In light of all this, I've been trying to pull together what might be termed out-of-the-box ideas from various sources which might have the potential to help alleviate the appalling lack of voter turnout, including: 1, sending each and every registered human voter an absentee ballot with postpaid return envelope, and/or 2, providing new, upon implementation of the Delaware voter registration system, human voters an incentive by 1, A, enacting a percentage reduction in their utility bills, and/or B, providing a stipend, and/or 3, collecting citizen donations to fund extensive publicity for municipal elections, and/or to fund proposals 1 and 2. My fellow citizens and I expect to hear Mayor and City Council's thoughts about and reactions to these out-of-the-box solutions, as low voter turnout is an absolute scourge in our municipal elections. Finally, if Mayor and City Council actually address and attempt to solve our municipal election problems, 2024 could qualify as a Happy New Year in Seaford. Thank you.
Okay, do we have anyone else here for public comment?
We have a Jay Howman.
Signed in by mistake. Okay. Anyone else? That's okay.
I'm just gonna say, Mayor and Council, I just want y'all to really realize that today we're having a really bad storm. And I would like for you to consider the fact that the water is already up to like 2 feet when we were leaving. And so you maybe wanna be concerned about the people in Bel Air. We may not be able to get out or come in a couple more hours. So please, open the gate.
Okay, anyone else here for public comment? Okay, do we have any correspondence?
No, sir, we do not.
Okay, all right, we'll go on to new business number 1, and I'll call up Mr. Sims to walk us through the PCAC.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, sir.
So every year on January 1, DMEC updates the wholesale power supply rate for all of the DMEC members. And so this is the normal process we go through. We relevelize the PCAC so that we can just dollar for dollar collect our change in costs that will go to DMEC. They are increasing their rate from $84.17 per megawatt hour up to $91.21 per megawatt hour. So that's an 8.4% increase, and it's roughly about $800,000 additional expense for the Seaford's electric department. So in order to recoup those funds, the increase in the PCAC would be from, it's currently 0.00532 per kilowatt hour. It would need to be 0.01264 per kilowatt hour. So that's roughly a $7 increase on the average residential customer bill that uses about 1,000 kilowatt hours. And so that's going to be, for a residential customer, it's about a 4.6% increase in their bill. Now, overall, for all of the classes, it's going to be about 4.9% increase overall. And again, that is solely for the increase in the DMEC wholesale power supply costs, so that is just a dollar for dollar collection as per our ordinance. And so after those increases occur, on page 4, there is a graph that shows how the residential customers' bill has progressed since 2011. That was the previous high watermark following the pandemic. Following the Great Recession. And it was about $160 for 1,000 kilowatt hours. That's what it is today. So the increases we're talking about today would effectively be putting us above where we were in 2011. But all things told, to have the overall customer bill effectively only go up by 5% relative to what it was more than a decade ago, just speaks to, the ability of the operation that the city has done and DMEC to try and keep those power supply costs as low as possible. So the last 2 pages show where our rates compare to Delmarva Power after that increase. And so with Delmarva Power, we're about 9% less than them, or roughly $15 per month for a 1,000 kilowatt hour customer, less expensive in the city of Seaford than it would be with Delmarva Power. So if there's any questions on the PCAC portion specifically.
Okay, are there any questions from council? Councilman King?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's not really so much a question, it's a comment. And I know that this is something you don't control, but I'd just like to share this anyway. So we're sitting here tonight, we're talking about increasing utility rates, right? We're in the middle of our peak season, right? So typically, we've been very fortunate, the weather has been warm, so the demand for utilities haven't been as great as historically in the past. The thing that I struggle with is, you know, we're having, like I said, once again, having a conversation about increasing utility rates in peak season, and that could create a lot of hardship for people. So to me, this shows a huge lack of concern and consideration for their customers. And really, to be honest with you, I feel it's a decision made in poor judgment for us to even be here tonight talking about it. So I wanted to share that. So to me, it would be easier to have a conversation about rates and increasing rates if we're in the spring, kind of in the off season, not in peak demand and cold weather. We're typically where if somebody doesn't pay their utility bill or they get behind on their utility bill, it gets cut off. So for me personally, in good faith and conscience, I would feel a lot better having a conversation about the possibility of a rate increase in the spring than I would in the middle of winter.
Mm-hmm. And so we do understand that the wholesale power supply cost portion of the bill specifically, which is what we're talking about today, that we don't have any control over because it is DMEC that sets the rate for all the DMEC members, and their fiscal year just happens to be a calendar year basis.
Now, do you think if all the municipalities got together and they kicked back on them saying, hey, you know, I had the same concern, that they possibly take a look at that and change their thinking and potential date of an increase to their customers?
I mean, they very well could. I mean, it is a joint action agency, and so the city of Seaford has its fair share of that membership. I mean, there's 7 municipalities that are in there, and so if you get the majority that would want to switch it to be it's in the spring, you know, go from March till February, or go April to March.
Sure.
That may be a possibility.
Yeah, because a 5% swing could be pretty significant for someone, right?
Mm-hmm.
Could be the difference between keeping their heat on and keeping their heat off.
Mm-hmm.
And so once again, just me, my 2 cents is I'm very concerned having conversations in the middle of winter about increasing utility rates.
Mm-hmm. What makes it difficult is that if the city decided on its own merits to delay a change in the PCAC, what will happen is DMEC is going to increase the cost to the city in January. So the electricity that those customers are using today will be at the higher cost. And if we say we're not going to increase the PCAC until April, what that means is that those customers that are here today and using the power today at the higher cost may not actually be the same customers that are using the power in April to recover those costs. And so, because the city is going to have to collect for those revenues, so we would be under collecting for the first couple months of the year, and then you would have to effectively over collect to make up that balance. And it's going to be a different set of customers, a different usage amount for the customers, and so it wouldn't equitably collect their contribution to actual power supply costs if we delay.
No, I get that. It
portion.
could potentially be a loss if correct me if I'm wrong, of about $55,000.
It's about $70,000.
$70,000 a month,
That's
right?
correct.
So if we don't implement this because of their cost adjustment to us, then we're losing $70,000 of revenue per month for 3 months. To your point, is $250,000 in revenue. So how do you catch up on that? So like I said, it puts us in a tough situation. So in my opinion, we need to get together and kind of lobby to have them change their thinking. If it needs to be implemented, then let's implement it in warmer weather and not colder weather. Does that make sense?
I mean, yeah, absolutely, it does. I mean, I will say that Delmarva Power is regulated by the Delaware Public Service Commission. And the PJM fiscal year is a June 1 to May 31 fiscal year. And PJM is the regional transmission organization. They set the wholesale power supply markets. And so Delmarva Power is effectively required to on a routine basis, on a set schedule, go out and purchase their power supply costs at whatever that price is. And then they have to change their rates to customers on that June timeframe. And so they run into that same issue. It's not to say that it makes it any better. I mean, it's nice that the city of Seaford does have the flexibility to make the decision to adjust the PCA when it would like to. But I will say that every Delmarva Power residential customer saw an increase of $16, which was well over, they saw an increase of $16 this past June, and they saw an increase even as large in the previous year as well, leading right into the peak summer months. So it is unfortunate, and like I said, it's nice that the city has the opportunity to make that decision to delay it, but unfortunately, when it comes to power supply costs specifically, it's a lot of the timing is just really what the market bears, and we're just in an unprecedented section of increasing costs.
Right, because if this passed tonight, it goes into effect next month.
That's right.
Right, so once again, it's typically one of your highest months of usage. Through the winter is, it's cold. So that's just my point, just to kind of follow back up. So if we pass this tonight, it's implemented next month, people typically use more power heaters. And so like I said, it's just my 2 cents. It's all I wanted to share. So maybe they definitely need to look at the way that they're structuring it and sending it us to implement it.
Yeah, because I know that the DMEC votes on it within either the first or second week of December, typically, to set their budget for their next fiscal year. And so, yeah, if you garner enough support amongst the members, they could switch it to a different time frame.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it.
Other questions or comments? Yes, sir.
Could you go to page 1 on the display? Yeah. So, I just wanted to maybe expound on what Councilman King was talking about. So, the 2024 estimate for January is 10.2 megawatt hours, which is one of the highest months. But we're not talking about measuring that month. You're going to measure in February, correct?
Right. So it'll be a February bill for January consumption.
Okay, so it is.
Right.
So it is going to be January consumption. Yet there are 3 other months: December, July, and August, that are higher than January. So there's no real good time to make a rate increase.
There is never a good time.
Never. I mean, my bill's going to go up. Everybody here at this table is going to go up. So I understand Councilman King's issue.
I'd rather be hot than cold. Just putting that out there, and not have to worry about my pipes freezing. Put that out there.
I understand, but being in the HVAC business, people will not tolerate a hot house. I would get more service calls in the summer for having a hot house than a cool house. So, I think I agree with Councilman King that it's never a good time to raise rates. However, I don't think we need to beat the bully pulpit up with 8 communities or 7 communities that use public power to alter their corporate structure and change a fiscal year. So, I just wanted to shed some light on the actual numbers and the actual consumption, because there are numbers that are higher, and just so that it reflects reality.
Right.
And one thing I will mention is that there are communities, it is very common for communities to actually calculate a PCAC effectively on a 3-month rolling basis or a 2-month rolling basis, meaning that they are changing their PCA almost every month.
Also,
to
it fluctuates.
reflect, right, and
Wow.
so, but the benefit with DMEC is that we get one rate and we know that's what the rate will be for the whole year. So it makes it, having that stability is very valuable to customers to be able to plan for what their cost will be for this next year. If you go to a calculation on a monthly basis, typically the balancing purchases, the cost of the energy itself is physically much more expensive in those peak months, December, July, August, and January. And so that if we were to go to a month-by-month calculation, the months where they have the highest usage is where it would also be the highest PCAC. And so there is, when you are able to set a rate for a full 12-month period, there is a lot of benefit in that.
Right. So is this impacting the commercial side too?
Every customer, yes.
So, do you mind if I, okay, just to follow back up, I mean, so we could sit up here and argue apple and oranges all day, right? To me, you know, if it's cold, if it's hot, but even on a residential or commercial side, we've just taken 5% of their profit, right? So this isn't an easy task to sit up here and say, oh, well, we're just putting up energy rates 5%, so we're only increasing your bill by $11, right? So it impacts every move that we make when we increase services, in my opinion, is serious, right? So the residential side of it, I get it. The commercial side of it, I get it, right? So we've raised those rates, right? So now we've taken away their profitability or profit, right? So they got to offset that somewhere in pricing or something in order to get that back. So just for me, it's not a good conversation or a feel-good conversation to sit up here and talk about, to me, and minimize any rate in service.
That's right. The difference is that the income of the residents and the income of the businesses should have increased at least along with the cost of living adjustment, which was, I believe it was over 6%.
I think you're correct.
So the Social Security benefits alone went up 6%, so you just sort of assume that, with inflation, obviously prices are going up, so the businesses are making more, and our power supply is costing more.
Right.
So we need to
But
keep up with that.
We just made that change on the water and sewer too, though, right? We made that adjustment.
So the changes on the water and sewer would have been for
Cost of
revenues
living,
for the
right?
city to, well, no,
No, my point
In
being
twen-
cost of living. We're saying cost of living. Everyone got more money through Social Security, right? So this isn't a big deal. Well, my point of it is, a few months ago, we just raised water and sewer, and we said, okay, we're justifying that as a cost of living raise, right? I mean, those dollars only go so far. So we could sit up here and argue it all night long, but the thing of it is, water and sewer's up, now electric's up. That dollar's only going to go so far at the end of the day.
Could I make a comment? Okay. If I knew today, owning a business, that for the year, my fuel price per gallon for my company vehicle was going to be X, even though it might be a little higher than what I wanted to pay, I could plan my budget accordingly, rather than one day it be $3.29, the next day it's $2.85. You go up the road, it's $2.79. You cannot. No business that uses energy in terms of fuel can plan their business out. We couldn't even get anybody to bid in for garbage, for trash removal for the city, mainly because of the fuel costs. So my point being is, you've got a gentleman here that says, hey, we're going to have an increase. This is what it's going to be, and it's going to be for a year. I'd much rather take the risk at that than the zap I've been getting from Delmarva Power for the past year and a half. Last month, I paid the highest electric bill in my store that I have paid since I've been open, except for the first month. And that is 18 years. So if Delmarva Power came to me and they said, this is it, it's fixed, we're gonna do this, and it's only gonna be 5%, I'd be thrilled.
So just so we're clear, this is the cost that, for the city of Seaford to purchase this power
That's
is what we're
correct.
covering. So
The
this
wholesale
is
cost.
the wholesale cost to purchase power. This isn't a rate increase just to raise rates. This is what it's gonna cost us to purchase power. So that's what we're discussing here tonight, just because I know we can get lost in the shuffle of.
That's this option that Mr.
That's
Sims
what
is
we're talking
discussing.
about right now,
Yeah.
so,
There's two other options.
yeah. Okay, any other questions regarding the PCAC? If they're not, we're gonna go ahead and take a motion on this.
I'd like him to finish his
Yeah.
presentation, if you
Okay.
don't mind, give you the
Okay.
other two options,
Yep.
and then council will have the choice on which option.
Okay, yep.
Yeah, so the second packet for is consideration for the increase in the operating expenses. So now setting aside the power supply costs, because as you mentioned, that is dollar for dollar going to go straight to DMEC. Like that doesn't be retained by the city at all to cover the increase in the city's operating expenses of the electric department itself. And so there were increases in the salaries and payroll expense for the electric fund. On page one, it was just relative to what was budgeted. It was only $15,000, but the last time that we made an adjustment specifically for operating expenses for the electric fund was in 2021 for the 2022 fiscal year. And so that's why on the second page, what I did is I looked at what the operating expenses were during that fiscal year 2022 and said, how has the picture changed? How have our operating expenses changed since '22 relative to the 2024 budget? So column B has where our operating expenses are, and it is offset by our other revenues there. So the negative numbers are credits. So in 2022, our total operating expenses, again, this is separate from power supply cost, is $2.186 million. That's what it was in '22. And then what was budgeted in '24 is in column D there, that's $2.4 million. And then we add to that additional $15,000 in the salaries and payroll expense. So it's almost $2.45 million is what the total operating expenses are budgeted to be for this fiscal year. And so that is an increase of about $260,000 in costs, net costs to the operation of the electric fund. Now that can be offset by any increase in revenues due to customer growth. There's been very little. Line 13 shows what the operating margin has been. It went from $5.45 million to $5.49 million, so that's $42,000 that we can net against that increase in expenses. So all in all, since '22, we've had an increase in expenses of about $218,000 in just the operating expenses alone. So going to the next page just for one moment then, so I have our current revenues in column B. It's about $16.6 million. Option one is if we were to do only the PCAC change that we were just discussing in the beginning. So only that change would be the increase of the $813,000 to cover the DMEC cost increase. That's the 4.9%. Option two is to say, okay, if we were to increase for the DMEC rate and then do an increase to collect for that $218,000, which is the overall reduction in our operating revenues since 2022, since the last time that we made an adjustment for operating expenses. That would be the additional $200,000, and so that would be about an additional 1.3% increase to customers. And so that would be a total increase in their bill of 6.2%. So again, that would collect for the DMAC cost increase, which is the majority of it, and then there would be a small increase that would be to collect for the increase in operating expenses of the electric utility itself, the $218,000. That would be retained by the city to pay for its operating expenses. And so as a third option, since, and going back to the previous page too, since the city's electric fund also covers some general fund expenses, that increase in the payroll and salaries that was experienced on the electric fund is also going to be experienced by mainly the police fund and the general fund. And so the general fund relies on revenues from the electric department to cover those expenses. And so the transfer from the electric fund to the general fund back in '22 was at $2.9 million. And to cover those increase in cost on the general fund side, that transfer is budgeted to be $3.1 million in '24. So that's an additional $215,000. So if the city wanted to collect for all three of these items, one being DMAC increase, two being the increase in operating expenses specific to the electric fund, and three, the increase in operating expenses for the general fund, then that's what option 3 represents, where that would be a total increase of the 7.5% to customers on average. Again, residentials are a little bit less than these averages because their average cost is a little more favorable. And so it would be about a 7.2% increase for a residential customer, which is on 1,000 kilowatt hours, it would be right around $10. And that would collect for all of the changes in power supply cost and operating expenses since '22.
And if I might add, the subsequent pages in the presentation, what Mr. Sims has laid out is what's called rate maintenance. So option 2 and option 3 detail each rate: residential, commercial, non-demand, commercial with demand on up. He's changing the customer charge slightly, increasing it by $1 in each case, and then subsequently there's a commensurate reduction in the kilowatt hour price. And in addition, in a couple rate classes, he's collapsing the rate blocks, so the bill's going to get a little simpler. We're not going to have 2 or 3 rate blocks. It's going to go to 2 or 1 rate block. So council's been on that march of customer charge increases for about the last decade. And Mr. Sims has demonstrated on page 4, or provided information as to where we are relative to some of our peer communities and other electric providers. We are in that area of sufficiency. We don't stick out very far from others because they are continually marching their customer charge forward. And as council is aware, that increasing our fixed costs is good for us for disruptive technologies, solar, other things, windmills, things like that. So he's detailed all those rate changes that would accompany option 2 and 3 in his subsequent pages.
I think we talked about when the public asked us to increase our police force with more people on the street, that we knew that at some point we'd have to come up with options of how we were going to pay for all that. So appreciate the work you've done to present that. All right, questions from council? Yes, Councilman McCoy.
Mr. Sims, going to put you on the spot for a minute. A couple questions. I was here for the electric committee meeting last week. The term, I believe, that was tossed out regarding how the city of Seaford predominantly, over the course of history, your involvement was gradual. Our approach to this has been gradual as far as rates, raising rates. There have been many years that we haven't raised anything. for people watching this, or people consuming this information, could you explain a little bit about that process and that history? 'Cause I know when people hear rate increases, the way that's digested by some people is very important. And I know over the years that this council and previous councils have really been adamant about trying to limit as much tax increases as possible. In your history here, can you describe that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. No, and you bring up a good point, because when we raised the rates in '21 to collect for the increase in operating expenses, it was about a 3% increase. And we had limited it at that time to be half of the cost of living adjustment. And so that was the first increase in operating expenses since 2011. And so what I mentioned during the electric committee meeting is that if we were Delmarva Power or any investor-owned utility, they typically go in for a retail rate case. Since they are regulated by the Public Service Commission, they would go in for a rate case every year or 2 years at the most. And so those customers would experience increases specifically for operating expenses on a year or biannual basis. So the city has been proactive and able to manage your expenses well enough that it was only a 3% increase in operating revenues was necessary from 2011 to 2021 over that 10-year time period. And what we're talking about today would be roughly another 2%, 2 years later. And considering these last 2 years specifically, that 2% is, I guarantee you, a very low figure relative to almost any other commodity or operating expense or bill out there. So yeah, the city has done a great job, and like I said, if this was an investor-owned utility, there would be rate cases every year, likely.
I think that the way we communicate that to the public and to the constituents is very important. And to basically lay out, you said, for a decade there, we didn't have any increase. Now we have some because the bills come and due. That's what's happening. It's the reality of it. To the mayor's point, we knew by making police decisions to keep the city safe that this bill was going to come due. And that's the reality of what we're facing now. When we talk about rate increases, I want to make sure it's very clear that I don't believe anybody up here is gleeful in this concept that we have to look at raising rates. Nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to talk about it. It's the reality situation that we're facing. What I would ask of anybody here in council, if that they don't agree with raising rates or they want to comment about that, to make a motion with a solution based behind it. If you think there's another way to go, I'm open to suggestions about alternative solutions. But this is what we have in front of us. So I guess what I'm saying for a nutshell is, if you're going to sit up here as a council person and just say, I vote against this with no solution behind it, that's worthless. Bring up a solution to back up what you're saying. That's all I'm going to say.
And then I have one more question.
Sure.
Mr. Sims, can we talk about cost line 123? So the dollar amount, so the power, the cost adjustment to the power, what was that dollar figure to the city? So you gave us a dollar figure for the power adjustment cost. You gave us a dollar figure for the cost of operation expenses, and then there was a third expense that you gave us, dollar amount. Can you give us those three numbers again?
You mean the transfer to the general fund to cover the general fund expenses?
Yep. So can you give me the cost of power adjustment and then the cost of operation? And yeah, can you give me all of those numbers in dollars, please, again?
So did you want what the DMAC costs are today and what they're going to, or just what they're going to?
What they're going to.
Okay.
Yeah, what they're going to, yeah.
Yeah, they've raised it. It's now going to be $91.21 per megawatt hour.
Okay, and then what's the total adjustment to the city What was that total dollar amount?
So
If
that's
it's 70,000.
Oh, sorry, that's a
So if it's
$7.
70, if it's
Se- se-
$70,000 a month,
No,
$830,000.
813,259.
how much is
Yes.
it?
Right there.
Mhm.
813,259.
Okay.
Column C, line 7.
Okay, what about the cost of operations?
So that's on
increase?
page 2.
What was that number?
Column E, line 15.
15.
Yep.
That's $218,460.
$460. And then what was the last adjustment? What was
So
that?
that's
Was
the
it
transfer-
Transfer from general fund? What was
Transfer
that? What was
out,
that?
that's $215,953.
Okay.
And Councilman King, those numbers are predicated on this list of determinants that he runs in a sophisticated algorithm. So that's looking at this group of numbers, the consumption that occurred, looking back and applying those to some forecasts that he's made.
Right, so we're adding, so not only are we saying, let's add the cost, right? So the new cost of power.
The
So we're
wholesale
saying
cost.
wholesale costs, right? So we're adding that, and we're saying on top of that, if we go with option 3, we want to add another
$434,413.
That's correct.
Sure. Now, to Councilman McCoy's point, once again, as a sitting councilman, yeah, I have an alternative. We've never sat up here and talked once about cutting any expenses. All we're saying is let's add $500,000, let's vote yes tonight, and we haven't, none of us have done our due diligence and looked over on where we can alleviate some of that cost. So if he wants a motion, I'd be happy to make a motion to table it until each of us sit down and look over the budget to see where we can get the $500,000 and not have an increase on anything. So that's, I'm good, thanks.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from council? All right, so we want to break this out into 2 motions, correct? First on the PCAC adjustment, right, is the first.
So the way this is laid out, new business number 1 is the rate increase, and it's given in 3 options. Option 1, option 2, option 3.
Okay.
Option 1 is the PCAC adjustment alone, just to
Right.
address the wholesale cost increase. So if that's the motion, and that's what we go for, that's the change that'll be made. Option 2 is to increase the rates to cover an additional net change in transfer out by $218,460. Okay, so if you motion option 2, it'll be the PCAC adjustment plus that transfer out increase.
Well, that one's for the operating expenses.
Thank
For
you,
the
sir.
electric
Sorry.
department.
Thank you, for the
Yep.
electric department, I
Yes, sir.
appreciate that.
Yep.
Yeah, option 3 is all of them together accumulated, and it would include the transfer out.
Okay.
That's right.
Then the second would be the change in the fee and rate
Yeah,
schedule
the
to
fee and
mirror
rate
that.
schedule, it would mirror
Yes.
it, yes,
Okay,
sir.
thank you. All right, just want to make sure everybody's clear on that.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
To Councilman King's point, if we were to hypothetically consider a motion to table, it would be, in theory, come back up the next council meeting, which would be the last meeting in January.
That's correct.
If we were to proceed in that direction, would that be problematic for the fee and rate schedule because it'd be the last
So,
Tuesday in the month?
So, Councilman, I'm going to answer your question like this. June Merritt, our Director of Finance, is here. She's going to have to help me a little bit. What has to happen is we have to change the rates in the computer system and then get the bills out. So I'm going to punt this one a little bit. June, do you have enough time with the billing schedule to be able to make that rate change if we were to not do this until the 24th of January? Okay.
Thank you.
Could I make
Yes,
one
sir.
comment?
Yes, sir.
Hey, we have an annual planning session coming up in 2.5 weeks.
Yes, sir, we do.
So, you know, that's the perfect time to talk about cost savings. But I'm inclined to move forward, and, I mean, we've always, I think we've always been very, very diligent about controlling costs. in the face of rising expenses. So I'm not averse to talking about putting proposals on the table to find even more money than $500,000. So, my inclination is to move forward to recover our costs that we've held off for the last 2 years. I think people seem to forget that electric rates went down for years before they started going back up in the last 3 to 4 years.
Right.
There was a huge windfall from lower costs, lower energy costs, up until, surprisingly, about 3 years ago.
Right.
So, and you can draw whatever conclusions you want from that.
Right.
So, I'm inclined to move forward. I mean, unless someone wants to put an alternative motion on the floor.
Okay, yes, sir.
I too would be inclined to move forward, but I also want to provide any of the council people who believe they like to do their due diligence prior to this, if they believe there's another method of doing it and finding the $434,413 for a budget or another method, I would give them that opportunity. And if Ms. Merritt's correct that January 24th is not going to change anything, I have no problem postponing it for 2 weeks and allowing that opportunity. This is my position. I don't know if you need 2 weeks or...
My problem here is that we spend 3 months from March until June figuring out what the next budget is. I don't believe that it's fair to this body or the citizens to, in 2 weeks, figure out the budget. In 2 weeks, we got to figure out the budget, and I don't think that is fair to anybody to deliberate.
Right.
To figure out cost cutting for a $30 million budget.
Yeah, but I disagree completely with that.
We should always be doing that. But why?
Because this doesn't go away, right? This once we raise the cost, right? That doesn't go away. The only way that goes away is if it comes back. It's always quick to go up and it's very slow to come down, always. And so what I'm saying is, regardless, I feel that a rate increase to services should be the last thing that any of us do. I think we should do our due diligence and look through to see if there's any way that we can save the residents of this community money. We haven't done that. So I'll make a motion that we table this and bring it back in 2 weeks when we've done our due diligence to see if there's a way that we can save money for our customers. That's my motion.
All right, we have a motion on the table to table this to the next meeting. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second the motion.
There's a second on the motion. Are there any questions on the motion? All right, we'll do a roll call vote. Councilman King?
Aye.
Councilman McCoy?
Aye.
Councilman Bradley?
Nay.
Councilman Henderson?
No.
Councilman Holland?
Nay.
Okay, so that motion failed. The only thing I'll say before we have another motion that bothers me a little bit here is that everybody at this table spent hours and hours in meetings discussing rate increases for the electric department, and I believe were voted on unanimously to give those increases. We voted unanimously to increase our police department, provide safety to our community unanimously. We all knew these costs were coming. I appreciate no one wants to raise rates. I don't want my bill to go up either. I get it's a difficult vote, but we all gleefully voted to do those things to take care of our employees, to make sure these departments ran, and to keep our city safe. We all knew this bill was going to come due. I always think we should look for ways to save money. I believe we always have. I think this council has proven that. But that's what troubles me is we vote for increases, but then we have to pay for it. It's tough, but it's got to be paid for. So,
You know what? Then maybe we don't need to take cars home. Maybe we need to bring the cars back, park them at City Hall. Maybe people don't need to be driving around in cars and putting gas in
You
them.
can certainly bring those motions forward, Councilman Kane, anytime.
Thank you.
Okay, so that motion failed. Is there another motion?
I do have a question on the actual motions presented.
Sure.
There's two separate motions, options 1, 2, or 3.
Correct.
Do we need to specify, or just saying option 1 or option 2, option 3 is sufficient?
Yeah, if you would say which option you want to go with, but there are two things we need to do.
Yeah.
We need to do new business one and then the fee and rate schedule, but they correspond.
Right,
So
so same option.
Yeah, just want to make
On
sure.
both of those
Okay.
items.
Thank you
Okay.
for clarity. I'll make a motion. I'll make the motion to accept the recommendation of Mr. Chris Sims with Smart Utility Management to accept option 3 to include an adjustment to the power cost adjustment clause, PCAC, to address the increase in wholesale electric rates and additional electric rate maintenance items as presented.
Okay, we have a motion from Councilman McCoy. Is there a second?
I second the motion.
Councilman Bradley seconds. Are there any questions on the motion? All right, if not, we'll do a roll call vote. Councilman Bradley?
Now, how am I supposed to? Help me out.
Aye, or
Just
you
aye?
can-
Okay, aye. Don't want to make a mistake.
Councilman Henderson?
Aye.
Councilman Holland?
Aye.
Councilman McCoy?
Aye.
And Councilman King?
Once again, I feel that we haven't done our due diligence, and I think it's a misjustice to raise rates without doing that. And so with that being said, I vote no. I'm completely against it.
Okay, so number 1 passes, all right, and then now we'll go on to the fee and rate schedule. If there are no questions, I'll accept the motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make the motion to approve the revisions to the fee and rate schedule to change the power cost adjustment clause, PCAC, to address the increase in wholesale electric rates and additional electric rate maintenance items outlined in option 3 as presented.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I second the motion.
Councilman Bradley seconds. Any questions on that motion? All right, we'll do a roll call vote on this again. Councilman Bradley?
Aye.
Councilman Henderson?
Aye.
Councilman Holland?
Aye.
Councilman McCoy?
Aye.
Councilman King?
Well, if I was against the first one, I'm definitely against the second one, so that's
Okay.
no.
All right, so the motion passes. Mr. Sims, always thank you for your work you do on this. We appreciate it so much. All right, next we have Mr. Barnes from the University of Delaware, and we're doing a phone-in on this.
Yeah, due to the weather, Mr. Andrews is going to try to phone Mr. Barnes in, so if you give us just a second. Yes, there are, sir.
Just let me know when to go. I muted the live stream.
We can hear you.
Can you hear us?
Just one test from
Can-
from the mayor, possibly, please.
Yes, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you, and I take it you all can hear me.
Yes.
All right, fantastic. Thank you all for the opportunity to present, both mayor and council. So I'll introduce myself. Just a heads up of what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to introduce myself, talk a little bit about our program. I believe you should have some slides in your slide deck to follow along. So I'll talk about the grant assistance program. I'll talk a little bit about our team, and then I'll get right into the details about the specific grant and project that I'm here to present about today. So my name is Chase Barnes. I work at the University of Delaware Institute for Public Administration on our grant assistance program. We were funded by the Delaware State Legislature in the 2022 bond bill, and we're funded through 2027 to provide free technical grant assistance to Delaware's local governments. So most of that direct hands-on technical assistance is funding opportunity research, project scoping support, grant writing, and then once an award is hopefully made, the compliance and reporting aspect. We also provide training, workshops, research, and ad hoc inquiry response. If someone could advance the next slide for me. Yeah, so we're on the next slide. You'll see, yeah, there we go. So we're a 4-person team. We have 4 full-time employees who provide this technical assistance to Delaware's local governments day in and day out. Our principal investigator is Troy Mix, so he kind of guides our work. And then we do get some support from one of our senior fellows, Larry Winley, who's a Seaford. He's from Seaford, so it's nice. I think he's tuning in, watching right now. And then we also have the support of 2 grad students. If you could advance the next slide for me. Yeah, so I'm here today to talk to you about the Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities Grant, which we call BRIC. BRIC is a FEMA grant program that's designed to help communities become more resilient to climate risks, sea level rise, and natural and man-made disasters. The primary objective of the grant is to reduce disaster risk to life and property before disasters occur, because that's typically cheaper than after disasters occur, especially when we're talking about life to persons. And then some other key goals of the program are to protect critical infrastructure like utilities, maintain the continuity of government, and make sure that emergency services are operational before, during, and after extreme weather events, not unlike we're having today. Next slide, please. We first started speaking with Charles and Tricia about potential BRIC application all the way back in November, and I just want to commend Charles Anderson, Tricia Newcomber, and Bill Bennett for their work so far on this grant. They've been really great to work with, and I commend them. So some quick BRIC logistics to be aware of as we're approaching the deadline. So the application deadline, which the first application goes to DEMA, which then submits on behalf of all applications in Delaware to FEMA. So that DEMA deadline is January 31st, 2024. So just a little over 3 weeks away. Then the FEMA will review all of the applications nationwide, and then make award announcements. We anticipate those award announcements to be made typically around the October timeframe. So we're anticipating an October 2024 award announcement. For the specific project, which I'll talk about in just a moment, work would begin then, and awards would be authorized around the February 2025 timeframe, pending any federal budget issues or any major disasters that might limit available funding for FEMA. This particular federal grant does require a cost share, so it's a 75% federal match and a 25% local match. However, it's important to note that that doesn't have to only be cash. That match can also be met through in-kind contributions such as equipment, materials, and labor. And really the big thing to show that is just in a letter of assurance that the city will provide the match through either cash or in-kind contributions. And then that match is only required if the award is made and accepted by the city. And then one thing that's new for the BRIC program this year, to compensate for the staff time through the project management process, and you'll receive 5% of the total project cost back from the BRIC program. So that will offset some of the staff time costs that may be incurred through this project. So the next slide. So the specific application for this BRIC round is going to be to further the Oyster House Park development that's underway, particularly the undergrounding of electric utilities. I believe it's Circuit 290 from about Church Street to South Pearl Street along the river. In order to deliver this project, we're going to pursue what's known as the phased approach, which is a sort of subset application within BRIC, which occurs over 2 phases. It would only be one application, but once you're accepted for phase 1, it's almost like you're set up and almost guaranteed to get phase 2 construction funding. So in phase 1, a lot of that work would be to finalize designs, come up with more detailed cost estimates, any type of environmental analysis and permitting work that needs to be done, and data gathering that will be necessary for a more detailed benefit cost analysis that's required by FEMA. Once that's all done, and that's sort of an iterative process, like with FEMA, to make sure that the project is developed to their guidelines and standards, so that when you then apply and request funding for construction, there aren't any surprises on anybody's end, either the federal government or the city of Seaford. So phase 2 then would be construction. And that's essentially the overview. I know that I've been tuned in since the meeting started, so I just wanted to keep that brief. I'm happy to answer any questions at this time, should anyone have any.
Okay, council, is there any questions for Mr. Barnes in regards to this grant opportunity?
Yes.
Speak loud. Mr. Barnes, Mr. Councilman Henderson has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Barnes. I see on the worksheet that Director Bennett proposed that there's a figure of $12,800 and $35,650. Would that be considered in-kind contributions?
Councilman, which specific worksheet are you looking at? I'm not sure.
There's a worksheet based on costs of materials and labor and equipment for this project.
Yes.
So we're not counting materials because they would have to go out and be purchased, but we have equipment and we have labor. So that would be considered part of that contribution rather than paying a cash, that part of it. I'm sure there's a delta there. But it would lower the delta on our cash contribution.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So the numbers that I have, and we're still working to develop the budget with city staff. So yeah, the engineering documents that I received most recently put the total project cost, including designs, permitting, and construction, at about $395,000. And that worksheet that you just referenced, I believe it has the labor and equipment comes out to around $50,000. So the difference would need to be made up either through additional in-kind contributions or through a cash match.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Are there any other questions from council? If there are no other questions, I'll accept the motion.
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Holland, I make the motion to approve the staff to work with the University of Delaware Institute for Public Administration to apply for a building resilient infrastructure in communities, abbreviation BRIC, BRIC, grant opportunity that would provide a matching grant 75/25% for installing the existing electrical circuit underground at Orchard House Park to increase its resilience and reliability in the event of storms or sea level rise as presented.
Okay, we have a motion from Councilman Holland. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, it's unanimous. Mr. Barnes, thank you so much for joining us. I'm glad you were able to stay safe and phone it in tonight. We appreciate you and especially Mr. Wendley.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you all for your time, and I look forward to working with the city of Seaford in the future.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, next we have the Breminghorn Outdoor Patio.
Yes, so our Director of Economic Development is not here today, or she would be presenting this. She marshaled this to this point. But what council has in their package is a revision, proposed revisions to the lease agreement for the building across the street, 106 Spring Street, that Breminghorn occupies and we rent to them. And their business has evolved as their business plan, when they worked with us, said it would. And they're to the point now to where they would like to establish an outside patio space in front on the grass lot. And they would also like to apply for and obtain a brewery license. So in accordance with the ABC requirements, the lease document, because they don't own the building, has to state these. So the red line copy in your package shows where in section 1.2, we added using the area as an outside patio space per approval of the Board of Adjustment on January 3rd. Board of Adjustment did approve that as required. And then you'll see in the term, section 2.1, it also, some dates have been changed to coincide with this. And as well as a meadery, it says and brewery. And then Ms. Newcomer also updated the rental terms because we know them now. We did not know when they would occupy. So she took this opportunity to include those in your red line copy. That's the extent of the change. And again, this is required. We would execute this if council approved it, provide it to the tenant so that they can provide it on to the Alcohol and Beverage Commission to move forward with their brewery and outdoor patio space.
Okay, are there any questions to the revisions to the lease agreement with Birmingham? Councilman King?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Charles, can we elaborate a little bit the difference between a meadery and a brewery? Can we talk a little bit about the difference between the two?
I'm certainly not an expert, Councilman King. I have spoken with John and JR, and I've toured the facility with them. They have a winery license, and it's part of a farm license, as I understand it. And it does not require all the things that a brewery license requires. And I don't know all the specifics. The brewery license is another level, and it's a little bit more sophisticated. I don't want to say onerous. There are some other things they have to do. Added on top of that is this ability to have this outside patio with drinks served outside. One thing that you'll see when this is developed, if it moves that far, and they showed the Board of Adjustments, they actually have to fence that area in so you can have more control over people who are consuming the alcohol. You know who's coming in the area, going out the area for supervision
So
purposes.
is the brewery more like beer?
The brewery would be beer.
So it's an additional product line?
It would be an additional
Okay,
product line.
that's good. That's excellent.
Yeah, in
Okay.
speaking with them, a lot of people have come in to the location, and they believe there's beer there, and when they find out there's not beer there, they feel like they're missing a market.
So is that something, they're going to actually brew and manufacture the beer the way they do the meadery? I mean, under those same type of guidelines? They're going to make it themselves?
They are.
Yeah. Okay.
In that, and they showed us where they actually submitted to our Public Works Department, our Director of Public Works, information on the discharge, the equipment they're going to use, because we're worried about that going down to the wastewater treatment plant. So that's been approved by our staff.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Other questions? Councilman Holland?
Charles, refresh my memory. Wasn't there supposed to be a brewery coming to downtown?
Yes, sir.
Whatever happened to that?
Yes, sir. I have stopped in there twice over the last
So it's
couple
still in the
months.
process?
Yes, I have not spoken with him since before Christmas, but he was still cleaning the area up, making renovations to the inside of the facility. And I understand on Facebook, he's announcing he's soon to open, so, but I have not heard that directly.
Can I comment?
If it's on Facebook, it's true.
It has to be true. I like Charles. I've toured the facility a couple times. I went downstairs with Mike, who's the owner of the brewery, and he has everything ready to function, so he's making a lot of progress.
Okay.
Now, is there a stipulation on liquor license? I mean, within so many feet? Like, so can this guy have a liquor license and then they have a liquor license?
I honestly don't know.
Okay.
We don't have that in our zoning ordinance.
There's any issues with that.
But,
It's like a restaurant.
Right.
yeah.
Right. Yep.
Got two restaurants side by side, and they both serve liquor.
Yeah.
But They
Okay.
don't serve food here.
All right. If there are no further questions, I'll accept the motion.
Councilman Holland, Mr. Mayor, make the motion to approve revisions to the lease agreement with Bremen Horn Meadery for 106 Spring Street to include an outdoor patio and a brewery as presented.
Okay, we have a motion from Councilman Holland. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Councilman King seconds. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, it's unanimous. I just want to take a quick second and thank council and the city for doing something out of the box there with incubator space, that we thought we could make something happen there, and it's really turning into something pretty unique for our downtown.
I really wish Ms. Newcomer was here, because she does deserve the credit to get
Amen.
this across the finish line,
Yeah.
so she
Okay.
deserves it.
All right, next I'll call up Ms. Hickey to walk us through the changes to Riverfest.
Good evening,
Good
everybody.
evening, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. So, I would like to talk about, I hope you enjoy some of these pictures. A little bit about the Nanticoke River Fest. The tradition began just as a handful of people wanting to float down the Nanticoke River. I believe that is back in 1994. I was trying to do my math, but that's not my strong suit. This eventually grew into a 3-day event, which was once host to probably a couple thousand people, if not more. I know I experienced it as a child. And now it is a single, I know, I'm still very young. And it is now a single-day event, as you all know. I'd say the peak years were 2010 to 2015. It was also prior to 2010 as well. Just for finance purposes, those are the years that I put in because they were very successful years. But over those years, but since then there has been a massive decline in participation. And I'm talking about there aren't any more partnerships from local organizations. Don't get me wrong, we have a lot of sponsorships and a lot of dedicated sponsors who have been helpful towards this for over 20 years. But we're talking about partnerships that actually hosted certain elements of the event that when they stopped hosting it, they just didn't exist anymore. We do have less sponsorships. We still have many dedicated sponsors, but it has lessened over the years. And then we also have 1/3 of the committee members. In 2010, there were roughly 35 committee members. In 2023, there were around 12. And I also want to just take a second to recognize those dedicated volunteers because they are volunteers who served for many years. I have only been doing this for 7, and most of them have been doing that at least double that amount of time. So I do want to thank them for their service. But we do, as part of the Nanticoke Riverfest Committee, we do feel that it is time for a change. A lot of you all know about the events that are held downtown, actually in the space that you just talked about, where the meadery and brewery are. It's called Friday Night Live. Now, this event it's hosted by a local nonprofit organization known as Seaford Tomorrow. It is a reoccurring event. It's only from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. On Friday nights, and it's hosted in the downtown area. In the last 2 years, we have seen it really grow and develop, and it's becoming more known among the residents of Seaford. As you can see in the bottom left photo, that is from 2018, and that was like a peak time when people were there. And the top right photo is from our August event, which I'm almost positive we had well over 200 people in that crowd. So that was really something nice to see. So with knowing that information about Friday Night Live, going forward, the Riverfest Committee would like to make a recommendation to officially end Nanticoke Riverfest Festival. And they would like to host a Friday Night Live or sponsor it as a tribute to the Nanticoke Riverfest. This would happen on the same weekend as Riverfest normally takes place, which is the second weekend in July. That Friday Night Live would be held, and it would be, like I said, under special circumstances, whether it is an extended event from 4 p.m. to 9 p.m. or 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. It may be a little bit larger than in the average Friday Night Live, and it would involve members of the Seaford Tomorrow organization as well as the Nanticoke Riverfest Committee. It would become, even though they would be sponsoring, it would be a partnership. And then the following day, we didn't want to lose the complete tradition of Riverfest, but they agreed to keep the annual float-in, because that is something that is not, it continues to grow year after year. I think, Charles, you know firsthand that it hasn't gotten any smaller.
No.
And
People
that
love
would
it.
happen the following day on that Saturday. So you would have a Friday Night Live event downtown, and then the following day on Saturday, you would have the annual float-in. Does anybody have any questions?
Any questions for Ms. Hickey? Councilman Henderson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Of course, you know I wasn't there, but I have a question about entertainment.
Yes.
Do you intend to have multiple acts that night, or just one act over the entirety of the event?
We haven't discussed the details because I wanted to present this just as an idea, but we're certainly able to, especially if we extend the hours, like I said, maybe 4 to 9 p.m. I would not just have one entertainer there.
I would suggest
we
that,
would like to
because that's a
have-
long time for
Yes,
a performer to
absolutely.
perform. Right. But typically, Friday Night Live is just one act, so.
Correct.
You know, if you had 2 to 3 acts, then it would be something for everybody, because maybe the particular group wouldn't enjoy that
Correct.
particular thing.
I agree.
Yeah. Thank you.
Other
Yes,
questions?
sir.
Yes, sir.
So on Saturday, you're saying it would just be the float-in only?
It
And that
would, it would just be the float-in.
I have a comment. I think it's an excellent transition. I think Riverfest has pretty much run its course. I've been to several, and you gradually have seen it diminish, and this will actually keep it alive, but in a different direction.
Well, everything has a season, and I remember when the committee went from the 2-3 day event late at night to go to 1 day to try to keep things at peace and keep it going. That was a big change, and survived that change. I think the city will survive this change, but you never know who says, where's Riverfest this summer, and gets motivated to say they'll take the lead and run with it. And that's not a bad thing either, to bring it back in a different way. So if there's no other questions or comments, I'll accept the motion then.
I would like to make a motion to approve the recommended changes to the Riverfest event in 2024 as presented.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a second from Councilman Henderson. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, okay, it's unanimous. I also would like to say thank you to all the people that, it's an incredible amount of work to do that event, and I've witnessed it. I've seen our employees out there in the hot sun. It's a lot of work, and the volunteers that have done it. So thank you on behalf of our city, because I do think it is an attraction. The float-in is amazing, and I'm glad that's going to continue. So
Thank you all.
thank you, Ms. Hickey.
Thank you, Kate.
All right, next we have the speed reduction proposal on Old Furnace.
Okay, so in council's package, you have a letter from Mr. Ron Sutton, Junior PE with Civil Engineering Associates. He states, based on our recent meeting, we are requesting assistance from the city for a speed reduction from 50 miles per hour to 35 miles an hour along Old Furnace Road from Route 13 to the existing speed reduction near Middleford Road. It is our opinion that the letter from the city of Seaford would help facilitate this request from DelDOT. If you could just go to the next slide. This is an exhibit that was provided by Mr. Sutton, and I apologize. Let me introduce some people that are here. Mr. Jay Dolby, who's the property owner, is here, and we have some gentlemen here representing the developer that if council has any questions. So I apologize. I was remiss in that. Mr. Sutton has included this exhibit. It shows overlaid on the north side of Old Furnace as well as the south side of Old Furnace the proposed 2 residential developments. We're terming them Dolby North and Dolby South. And they are in various stages of approval. Council has looked at, I believe, preliminary plans for one or both of those projects. And we are continuing to work with them, staff, Director of Public Works, Director of Electric, Building Official. And as part of this project, you'll see that they need to get entrances off of Old Furnace Road. That's a state-maintained road. Currently, the speed limit is 50 miles an hour. And as part of this development, and as part of our discussions with needing to put in the shared use path, put in the acceleration lanes, the deceleration lanes, all the things that need to occur, the discussion came up about public safety and reduction in potential speed along this road. It's here tonight to see if council would consider providing a letter of support to DelDOT. Ultimately, it's DelDOT's responsibility because it is their maintenance responsibility for that road, will always be their maintenance responsibility for that road. The other caveat that's in the presentation is that this would be done in conjunction with some of the phases of these developments. So it would be implemented by the developer at the time when it needs to be done. So we wouldn't rush out there and do it now and interrupt anyone's life before construction. All the necessary signage changes and things like that would be implemented in conjunction with this development being implemented.
Is there any concern that this, even bringing this up, is going to cause or have DelDOT think of putting up another stop sign on this road, which would just send people right over the edge? Are we concerned about that?
I'm not sure if you gentlemen would like to field that question. Or
We don't have any intersecting roads there.
we do.
Good evening. I'm Ron Sutton with Civil Engineering Associates. So I don't know if we can zoom in on that. Is there a way for me to zoom in here?
I don't think so.
All right. So one of DelDOT's requirements was they actually wanted a raised pedestrian crossing between these two subdivisions. We tried to talk them out of it. It was in the TIS. So we actually have to have a pedestrian crossing. At 50 miles an hour, someone's going to get hurt. And we tried to talk them out of it, but they are forcing our hand to have this. So we have an island, it's called Refuge Island. It kind of happens right where the road starts to taper open for a turn lane, and it connects the two subdivisions. So at 35 miles an hour, it's a lot easier to cross the road than at 50 miles an hour with people picking up speed from Route 13. In addition, we found out today, I haven't even told the clients yet, but we have to pay into a roundabout fund. It will not accept a signal at Middleford Road.
At Middleford?
Yep.
Wow.
So they are starting to put together plans to put a roundabout there. We tried to talk them into doing a signal. The intersection fails today without the subdivisions.
So how's the roundabout gonna work?
I don't know.
You got a three-way stop, all the way on the other end of it.
My client just has to put money into a fund.
Yeah,
That's a DelDOT thing.
Well, I was half joking about the stop sign, but truly the public's very upset about the number of stop signs that are being put up everywhere. And
Yes.
you almost hate to bring up a good idea. I agree the speed limit should probably be slowing down for the number of people that are going to be coming out on that road. But DelDOT can take this and really add a lot. Well, I'm not telling you something you don't know.
They just add.
Yeah.
There's no
Okay.
deduction.
All right. Are there any questions from council? Yes, sir.
I'd like to ask Mr. Sutton, there's, a question for both the city manager and you. How much of this road abuts city land or city limits, is in city limits?
So the only properties that are annexed are the highlighted properties with this development. So the Dolby Farm proper completely was annexed on both sides of the road. The 50-some acre piece, I don't know what the frontage is. Mr. Dolby probably knows it off the top of his head. And then the entire length of the Dolby Farm there, which is several thousand feet. I'm going to just estimate for you. On the south side, it's probably 3,000 to 4,000 feet.
Let's say on the east side that goes to, what is that road? San Filippo Road? What is that road?
Yeah, That's the only property that's city property.
Okay.
City annexed property is the Dolby Farm, both sides.
Okay.
So it's
Nothing
about
else.
a quarter mile down that
So,
road, right?
so does DelDOT have a public hearing process about a speed limit change or any other public input besides our letter?
I don't believe they have a public input.
Okay.
They will assess it inside. We've asked for speed changes before, and they've denied it. So there's a good chance this won't even get approved. But we have been successful in changing speed when we have larger developments. And, you're going to have 300 and some odd homes when this is all said and done, as well as commercial. So it definitely makes sense that something should happen. They may not agree with our 35 request. Might be something a little less, but even if a little something lower than 50 would still help crossing the road.
Yeah, I know in the past that we've finally were successful at a speed reduction on West Stein Highway, exiting the city, or entering the city, whichever way you're going. But, that took a long time.
Yes, and the speed reduction study that Mr. Sutton is talking about had to be undertaken by our chief of police. I think this is a little different approach. In recent, the last couple decades of development, we've developed on West Stein Highway. We've developed out alternate 13, and the development's kind of happened, and then we've tried to change the speed limit. This is a little different approach. This is anticipating this development and saying, hey, this is what makes sense. So I commend the developer by kind of holistically looking at this. Should council want to support kind of getting out in front of this public safety issue.
Okay. Other questions, Councilman King?
Thank you, sir. The crosswalk, that concerns me. On alternate 13, it wasn't that long ago that there was a pedestrian killed, and that is a slow speed limit anyway. As you look at the potential growth in this area, is DelDOT really taking into consideration what this project could involve too? And the reason that I'm asking is this reminds me of another Tharp road, right? So, you got a country road, 2 lanes, and you've got the potential for a lot of development. Are they looking at long-term strategic planning? Or are they just saying, hey, you know what I mean? We'll figure it out as we go along.
We haven't figured out DelDOT yet. Everything changes. So, this is actually the first time that they've asked for this pedestrian crossing on this type of project, and we've pushed back 3
But they're not willing to
times.
put a light in.
They do not want a light.
Did they say
The light
why?
would go down at Middleford Road. It wouldn't happen at our subdivision, because our subdivision, there's not enough traffic.
Well, most of Middleford's 35 anyway.
Yes, that's what, so the drawing here is, we have 3,000 feet from Route 13 to the entrance. Just, you were asking about distance. And then from the entrance of the 2 subdivisions, we have another 4,200 feet to where the next, the 35 mile per hour speed limit starts. So it's less than a mile between the entrance to the 35, but, combined, you got, almost a mile and a half, mile and 3/4. So maybe a stage or staggered speed limit decrease would make sense. That would definitely help with the pedestrian crossing. DelDOT is mainly concerned with future connectivity and pedestrian facilities and access. So that's why they want this pedestrian crossing, so that, which I don't understand, people from this subdivision can walk across the street to the next subdivision, of which there's not going to be shared facilities, so there's really no need. And we tried to present that to them, but, you can only bang your head against the wall so many times.
Right. Yes, sir.
So, Mr. Sutton, what is the profile of a raised pedestrian crossing?
Yeah,
Is it 8 inches, 4 inches?
it just,
Is it like a traffic table?
It's almost like a handicap in an island. So when you walk into the island now, you're kind of walking in, but there's a raised curve around you. It gives you some protection.
Okay. I'm with you. When you said raised pedestrian crossing, I thought that you meant the whole roadway.
No, it's just the curbing around it.
Yeah, I got you.
Okay.
Maybe we should build a catwalk over it.
And Councilman King, I don't know if this helps, but I will tell you, we're working with the developer, the engineer, and we're looking at in conjunction with this project, doing lighting along that roadway to meet DelDOT standard. So that'll be a big improvement, and that is something that has lagged in other developments. So we're looking at that holistically as well. One of the things that works well here is the way they've positioned these entrances. You'll notice from the drawing, there's not a real sight distance issue, so you do have some sight distance there. It's not positioned at the curve in the road where, you just run up on it like at the hospital where there are those issues where, you're coming 35 miles an hour, that person's out there, and you've come around a corner in the road. So, again, they've been good working with us. They're really developing these drawings. I think this is going to be a very nice development once they get it, if they can get through this process. And I do think the 35 miles an hour or some speed reduction, would be suitable here or helpful.
So that's why we're asking for the 35, because if DelDOT, we've got
Have room
some
to move.
leeway to work with DelDOT if it's somewhere in between the 50 and the 35.
Understood.
Okay.
Okay. If there's no further questions, I'll accept the motion.
Councilman Holland, Mr. Mayor, I make the motion to provide a letter of support for speed reduction from 50 miles per hour to 35 along Old Furnace Road from Route 13 to the existing speed reduction near Middleford Road to coincide with the development of Dobie Farm property, Sussex County Tax Map Parcel 331-4.00-37.00 and 331-4.00-24.00 as presented.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I second, excuse me. I second the motion.
Councilman Bradley seconds. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, okay, it's unanimous. We'll get that taken care of right away. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, do we have any old business?
We do not, sir.
Okay, reminder of meetings.
Okay, just a couple this time. City offices are closed on January 15th in observance of the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday. Friday, January 26, 2024, from 8:30 till 3 p.m. is our city planning session, and that is at the Seaford District Library. And then, as we do annually, the municipal election is Saturday, April 20th, 2024. That will be between the hours of 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. here at City Hall and Council Chambers. And up for election is one mayor for a 2-year term, and then 2 council members will be elected for a 3-year term. I would like to announce that Councilman McCoy has filed for mayor, so we do have one candidate who has declared. That's all I have, sir.
And as a reminder, we do use the state's voter registration, so most people register when they get their license at 16 anymore, so and voting is super simple. Just got to show up. That's all you got to do. So, or get an absentee ballot, so encourage people to come out. All right, committee reports. Start with Councilman Bradley.
Mayor Genshaw, City Manager Anderson, first day with my new tongue, fellow councilmen, and city employees. I will first speak briefly about code enforcement. Right now, they're working on the storm water management in the city, because in the off-season, it's a lot easier to do a cleanup. And Muirfield had an end of the year permit surge of 45. I thought that was interesting. And from there, we will go to Parks and Rec. Med kits have been replaced in all the city vehicles. Basketball is in full swing, and they are using, I'm redneck boy. I was the nerd in school, okay? DIAA refs. And I am very pleased with the changes in the Riverfest moving forward. That concludes my report. Respectfully submitted. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, next, Police and Fire, Councilman Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As usual, we have 2 full reports. I'll give the highlights. The total department responses for 2023 were 5,405 calls for an average of 14.8 per day. which Chief Wilson mentioned that we are the busiest fire department as far as responses in the county. Second busiest in EMS responses behind Lewis, on both counts, I think. So I'm not sure. I think Lewis may have a little bit larger coverage area and it's more dense. So, well, it's actually less dense, but there are some dense areas there. So you can see that you know, the department's very, very busy. So would also like to highlight hours in service for the year of 2023 was 3,400 total hours in service. Personnel in service for a total of 17,813 hours. And total miles traveled for equipment was 36,384. Wow. So that that gives you an idea of the expense and the sacrifice in time that these volunteers and career folks put out. So under significant incidents, there were 6 significant incidents. All of these were outside of the city. 3 of them were in the fire district, and the other 3 were assists to other for mutual aid. Apparatus status: all apparatus is currently in service. All vehicles have been going through a CAD technology system update with a new IT person, which I'll go into it a little bit. The next you'll see 2,000 a monthly, the December monthly, and the 2,000 year-end fuel consumption. So I'll just leave it there for you to review in the interest of saving some time. The last training was on December 20th, 23 at Station 87, where they reviewed the operations of the Kubota 87 double lot and the brush truck 87-1. They had 15 members present for that training. The next training will be January 17th, where they'll do their annual CPR and a automatic defibrillator refresher course. The next chart you'll see in the report is the total numbers of hours in training, and this is from January 1st, 2023 to the end of the year, 2023. Total man hours of 3,391 hours in training. So that's even more dedication. If they're not out on the truck responding, they're learning their craft. Under EMS, they're still interviewing and testing to fill 3 positions, which will take place. That testing will be on January 30th. I think I mentioned at the last meeting on the 12th that Troy Christensen would be departing, and he has departed Seaford Fire full-time, and he begins his training at the District of Columbia Fire Academy next week. Andrew Enright has also left full-time, or he will be leaving full-time on January 21st before going to Anne Arundel County Fire Academy. And I'd like to take this time to thank both of them for their service to the Seaford Fire Department. Sussex County EMS leadership meeting is scheduled for January 26th. And Image Trend, which is an EMS reporting system, has had some minor modifications for this coming year. I'll end the Seaford Fire Department report with a couple of things. I'd like to congratulate this Delaware State Fire Prevention Award winners. Third place was West Seaford. Her name was Joy Jones from second grade at West Seaford. And another third place contestant from Frederick Douglass, Jade Sandoval Hernandez. She's in third grade. So the new generator project is all but complete except for some punch items.
Curbs and
possibly.
fencing, yeah.
Yep. And it's operational. Is that correct?
That is correct, sir.
It's operational.
Yep,
So
under warranty.
It may be, it may be working tonight, so.
It's done. We did it for you.
Yeah. So, and as I alluded to earlier, the Seaford Fire Department has hired an IT person. His name is Jason Boros to bring the computer technology out of the 20th century into the 21st century after almost, 24 years, right?
Exactly correct.
So he's been busy updating cradles in trucks and running wire and updating the facility to get it IT ready. So we thank him for coming on board. Seaford Police Department, you can see that he has a year-end. Generally, he gives data. The Chief Kraft gives data from the Sunday before this meeting, but he has abbreviated his report to coincide with the end of the year. So 2023 year-to-date total complaints was 11,112, and you can see under all crimes there's 5,010 for 2023, which is a reduction in the total numbers of crimes from 2022, which had 6,164. Now there have been some rises and some decreases among that subdivision of crimes, and I'll let you analyze that. But drug crimes dramatically reduced from 2022. However, there was increase in robberies and sex crimes. So overall, there was a reduction in crime from 2023 to 2022. It's just distributed differently. Under all crimes, under the month, from December 8th to the 31st, there were 15 felonies, 55 misdemeanors, 6 violations, and 142 others. The clearance rate has risen back up to 83%. It had declined there for a period due to some pending active cases which have been cleared. There are still a number of pending active and pending inactive cases. I'll move down to drug complaints, 16 total drug crimes, 16 adult arrests, and 4 search warrants. The Seaford Police Department encountered 7 overdoses during this period, which is, I believe, is an increase over the last report. Traffic, 76 traffic contacts, 32 citations and 25 warnings, 5 DUIs, 1 drug-related and 4 alcohol-related. 3 of these were crash-related. 56 crashes, 3 injury accidents, And during this period, there were 13 hit-and-run accidents. One motorcycle accident, 2 pedestrian accidents. Number of significant things to report here. I'll just end it with, on New Year's Eve, the Seaford Police Department responded to a large fight at Comfort Suites. Like they had to come break up the party. And there was a group of juveniles at the hotel, and the fight between hotel staff and a group of juveniles. So during the encounter, hotel staff members were assaulted, and an intoxicated juvenile was arrested for disorderly conduct, but the assault suspect has not been identified. The case is pending. You can see the chief is busy, chief and staff are busy with meetings going along, not to mention the surveillance monitoring initiative, which is in Laurel, and we have an upcoming meeting which is similar next week for Seaford. Under training, the SPEAR team is continuing their training of their team members. And I think I announced this on the last meeting. On December 8th, Lieutenant Mills graduated from his FBI LEADA Media and Public Relations course, so congratulations to him. And upcoming training later this week will be Corporal Matthews' taser instructor training. So that concludes my report.
Okay, thank you very much. Next, Administration, IT, Councilman Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I'd like to start off with a Happy New Year to all. And they attended a meeting held with Tidal Health regarding potential cogeneration project, and they completed Phase 1 environmental questionnaire for city-owned lots on Island Boulevard, and prepared and advertised customer service job opening if anyone is interested. And they attended various other meetings and events, and all the work is routine. That concludes my report.
Thank you very much, sir. Next, we have Electric, Councilman McCoy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We'll provide a few highlights. Like my fellow councilman, Mr. Holland, I would like to wish everybody a Happy New Year. Since the last report, the crew have continued changing lights in Woodside Manor to LED. They ran fiber to the Parks and Rec building, changed out the rubber gloves and sleeves, and did the monthly substation checks. They also changed the fire department connection back to permanent status for the new generator. And for those year-round Christmas fans out there, they took down the Christmas lights, sadly. So, the director, he had the standard director's meeting, staff meeting, council liaison meeting, reviewed drawings for 2 projects and sent comments to the building official, installed 2 generation meters on solar installations, and had a meeting on the PCAC and rate maintenance. Over the course of the next few weeks, they're going to begin working at the KRM building in the Western Sussex Business Campus, continue working in Bel Air single family residence section, and continue changing the lights on Sussex Highway to LED. Mr. Mayor, that's been my report. Submit its entirety.
Thank you very much. And lastly, Public Works Wastewater Treatment, Councilman King.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My report has been submitted in its entirety. I'm just going to hit some of the highlights from each department, starting with the Public Works Department. The Seaford Village Lift Station project is going well and is wrapping up. The Seaford Volunteer Fire Department generator replacement project is completed. The leaf machine is done for the year. It ended on December 31st. The Public Works Department partnered with the Code Department, and they cleaned up a couple properties on Chandler and Arch. The Public Works Department also got a new pickup truck in. They did some sewer repairs on Pine Street, and of course, they've been doing a lot of leaf and limb pickup and just keeping our basins throughout the city cleaned out because we've just had so much rain. Jumping over to the wastewater treatment facility, the plant is running well. They had to shock both sand filters following the rain event on 12/10, and it seems to have improved the performance. They have sampling scheduled for the 2024 year. They ran conduit for the new RSA pump, and they plan to begin the installation the week of 1/15. Some of the projects that are going to happen over the next couple weeks, they're going to install some water services throughout our community and just continue routine work and keep the plant up and running with no violations. And before I close my report, I just want to send out some thoughts and prayers. From the communication that I've seen, the storm has been pretty significant, created a lot of damage and flooding and even power outages all through the county. So I'm just hoping that everyone is okay. It seems like this is going to be a very expensive storm. So just thoughts and prayers to everyone out there. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. With that, I'll accept a motion to go into executive session at 8:49.
So moved.
Motion from Councilman Henderson. Is there a second?
Second.
From Councilman McCoy, a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, okay, it's unanimous. Thank you.
Glenn, go home and get some sleep, bud.